All right, guys. Thanks for joining the channel. Thanks for watching. And I know some people made some comments that we kind of left y'all on the cliffhanger on that last one, which was kind of unexpected. I had no idea it was going to be a cliffhanger, but it kind of was. After I looked at it, I was like, wait a minute, this kind of is a cliffhanger. So Tatiana agreed to come back. What's up, Tatiana?
Hey,
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am amazing as always. It's good to have you back. Um, so yeah, let's just not beat around the bush. Let's just jump right in. Um, the last thing that we said or that you said, you were talking about how you were reading your disassociation letter to the circuit overseer, you had a CO in your living room. You said you gonna listen to what I have to say, and he said we ain't listening to none of that. And you said you are in my house and you are going to listen, and he said we don't listen or negotiate with apostates. Something to that effect.
That sums it up pretty well, actually.
So, what happened after you said they asked you if you wanted to be a Jehovah's Witness and you said no? And that's where we left off.
Um, that was pretty much the climax. It was all pretty much downhill from there. They said okay, and they were done talking with me. They asked Robert if he still wanted to be a Jehovah's Witness, if he felt like I did, and Robert said no, that he still did want to be a Jehovah's Witness, and they said okay. Then they wanted to conclude in prayer, which the circuit overseer led in prayer, and he completely excluded me from the prayer altogether. They prayed for my husband, they prayed for my children, and they completely excluded me from the prayer altogether. Um, they got up, they went outside. Robert followed them, and they continued to have another 30-minute discussion outside, um, until I went outside, in which they scrambled. So, and um, yeah,
So they talked to your husband an additional 30 minutes away from you.
yes.
Did he share what that conversation was about, or did he just not want to divulge that information to you, or what?
I didn't ask, and he didn't tell.
How did the conversation go with between you and he when that whole thing was over with?
He chewed me out pretty well for being very disrespectful to the
To
elder and the circus overseer.
now was when he said disrespectful, is he just meaning the fact that you wanted to disassociate yourself or the fact that you were just standing up to them in general?
I was pretty forceful.
Pretty forceful. I get I get it. Hey, but look, I see where you come from. A lot of people, I think Tatiana, people just don't realize how frustrating this situation is to deal with. A lot of people have left comments and I've responded to a lot of them. Some of them I just chose to ignore, but most people really don't understand the frustration that you must have felt in those moments and probably how you still feel. Like, do you still feel frustrated with the entire situation?
Yeah, I'm still frustrated. I mean, there's been no resolve, so there's still a lot of frustration.
Do you so do you see I know you said you don't go, but do you still see that other people or think that other people who are around your husband, the congregation, are still talking to him about you or
Oh, most definitely. I know that they are still talking about me. I'm just a crazy apostate. I'm a liar. I'm a whole bunch of things, especially after being on TV. That certainly didn't help nothing.
well, what do you think? I don't really want to go into the show. I know you don't either, but what do you think has been one of the major regrets that you've had after all that has happened?
I don't. going on the show itself wasn't a huge regret. I mean, I do regret it, but that out of everything, that's not what I regret the most.
Mm-hmm.
When I first woke up and I desperately wanted my husband to wake up, I approached it all wrong. Um, I approached it all wrong. And if I had approached it with a lot more gently than I did, maybe I could have woken him up. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But
Do you see like in a lot of the comments? No, we've talked about what you just said. You and I have talked about it off air about the way people talk to people who they're trying to wake up. Do you think that a lot of the same ways that people get frustrated when they're trying to wake somebody up were some of the same things that you were dealing with in trying to wake up your husband, which is what caused it to be difficult for you to do it?
yeah, um, like I said, I went about it pretty much the same way Dr. Phil went about it,
Hmm.
and that wasn't helping anything.
Hmm. Hmm. Um, so going forward, we all know that you've dealt with a lot with the organization. You've left the organization. So what are you trying to do moving forward to make a better life for yourself outside of the organization? Maybe trying to help some other people. What what are you doing outside of the organization to try to help yourself and others?
The big thing that I've been working on is I feel a huge call to political action. Um, I see to activism in general. The Kingdom Hall crashing kind of got me looking into what are some different ways that we can approach this that I felt like more people could jump on board. The Kingdom Hall crashings was really polarized, and I wanted to see something out there that could bring people on both ends of the spectrum together, and I didn't see anything. And I thought, well, political action would be one way that we could unify um, the polar extremes of ideas, and I thought that it could be effective. Um, but there wasn't anybody leading that, and so I figured that if I could get a group of some people together who would be interested in that political activism, that maybe that would make the difference that we're looking for.
Okay, so what is the name of the thing that you started? What's it called, and how can people
So,
join?
so there's a Facebook group called PAC. That's PAAC, and it stands for Political Activism Against Cults. The name is very misleading because what the group is dedicated towards is creating a bill and getting a bill passed that actually outlaws predatory alienation.
Hmm.
Predatory alienation affects a large group of victims. It's not just cults. So, what I'm looking to do is to make predatory alienation in all forms completely illegal. A lot of people, when I present this idea to them, their first question that they ask me is, well, what about the separation of church and state? And I really wanted to go around that because once you start getting politically involved in trying to disseminate cults, that is a huge roadblock. So by completely not going after cults in general, but going after harmful policies and harmful practices that affect a large group of victims, we're not attacking religions, we're not attacking churches. It's not religious in any way. Um, so, by going after predatory alienation and making that outlawed, that would give people, that would open up a way for litigation, for people to sue organizations that have harmful policies in place, like predatory alienation. It just so happens to be that we know that there's a couple different religious groups out there that do have these harmful practices. So they would be an easy target.
Got you. So how has it been getting this started? Who have you spoken with, or who has advised you on what the best course of action? I don't mean who specifically. I don't know. I know you probably don't want to put that information out there, but I mean, what type of people have advised you and how to get this started?
Well, I've spoken to a couple different lawyers on this project, and a couple different theologians, a couple other activists out there. Everybody's initially really excited about it. Um, Unfortunately, I haven't had the time to dedicate to this as much as I'd like to.
Mhm.
Personally, myself, I have reached out to several of my local and state representatives to get them to see if they would like to sponsor a bill um, to make these harmful practices like predatory alienation illegal, at least in our state. And I've been trying to encourage others to reach out to their state representatives as well to see if they could find somebody to sponsor a bill.
So do you want to make this movement, I guess, you something that you start, but something that will be contiguous amongst different states that people can actually take under your moniker and achieve the same goal, right?
That's the idea, yeah. And it's actually it's not. I can't take any of the credit. New Jersey started this. It's still a pretty new thing. But if you go to the Facebook group PAC, PAAC, there's more information there about the bill that was recently passed in New Jersey, which is where I got the inspiration from. This isn't something that I was like, oh, let me do this. I the idea for political activism was something that I knew I wanted to do. So when I went to go research what was there, the bill from New Jersey was what gave me inspiration. And what I said, well, we need to fashion, you know, other states need to fashion laws like the one that New Jersey has. So I've been working on trying to get one in here in Texas, um, like the one that's there in New Jersey.
Okay, awesome. So we'll put a link to that in the description box. Please, guys, join her group. Let's get this thing going. Because again, like I said in the last video, the major point of all of us who are XJWs is to not just come out here and talk negatively about the Jehovah's Witnesses for no reason. Our point is there is a lot of things that we deal with that people don't know. And there's a lot of things that people who are in the organization who are trying to leave the organization have to deal with that people don't realize. There's a lot that we have to deal with. So please join this group, and let's see if we can get this going in every state that has this issue.
I mean, joining the group would be helpful, but I'm really looking for people who want to write and email and phone call and set up meetings with their representatives. I mean, that's really what we need is people who are willing to make those phone calls, willing to write those emails, willing to set up those meetings with their state and local representatives to see if they can find a sponsor for this horrendous practice.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Um, Tatiana, I know that since your appearance on that show, you've been exposed to a lot of people. A lot of people have opinions about you and your family and Jehovah's Witnesses in general. If there was one thing that you could say to let people know a little bit more about what type of person you are and what you think and how you feel, what would be something that you would say to people about yourself that you think people really don't realize?
I'm a mother first. Um, I get really passionate about the activism and a lot of other things, but first and foremost, I'm a mother. And I have been a damn good mom. Um, and I've had plenty of people under oath say that, testify to that. Um, my children have never been in any kind of danger. Um, And I think out of everything, that's what hurts the most.
Hmm. Hmm. Because people don't really know. It's easy for people to think they know you based on 45 minutes of seeing you, and there's so much more to life than that, right?
It was such a highly edited, highly scripted. Um, Everything was very coached and scripted
Hmm.
and super duper edited. There's no way that you could possibly, there's so much more than what was put on the show in the first place, and not to mention all the stuff that they cut out.
Right. So outside of the show, I know there's probably some things that you may have wanted to say to help other people and may have been cut out. What are some of the things that you think that you said then or still think that have on your mind that you think that you could say that would help people who are in your situation or help people better understand you and your situation? What is something that you think you could say to people to really sum up the way you want to help people or how they can help themselves or what you even went through?
That was so many questions all in one.
It really was one. Let's just break that down. It was just a lot in my brain with what you said, but what is something that you think was said that you wish could have actually gotten out that you think could have helped someone?
um, I gave the producers of the show a lot of information about the Australian Royal Commission, and they chose or could not. Um, I'm not really sure what happened with that, but I really wish that they had gone with some of the material that I had given them about the ARC. I was really
Hmm.
disappointed that they didn't use that.
I wonder why they chose not to, really, in light of everything that the organization is going through in regards to that. Why they chose not to even research that aspect of it, especially since it was something that they tried to pull on you, knowing that they were going through all this crap. I never understood why. I don't understand why they wouldn't even go and research that. That's a valuable piece of information they just totally disregarded.
There's not, they didn't, I couldn't answer that one for you why they did or didn't research anything. I do know that these producers worked like 24/7. The producer that I was involved with, that I'm involved with, we were exchanging emails back and forth at midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, she was on call 24/7. Um, and I gave them so much information. And it didn't seem like I mean, when I asked, she said she did some research, but it didn't appear that way to me. And I couldn't tell you why, or I really don't know.
You told
I don't have any excuse.
you told me that you have a lot of information that you've done or that you have as far as researching cults. And would you like to share any of the information that you or in the books that you're reading that have helped you have a better understanding of cult type thinking in general or something like that? Would you want to share some of that information?
Oh, I'm always going to plug for Steve Hussein, his books, especially combating cult mind control.
Hmm.
Um, for somebody fresh out, that would be the very first book that I would tell them to read.
Hmm.
I strongly encourage anybody fresh out. I mean, or even if you're not fresh out, if you're still struggling with those negative feelings, those overwhelming feelings, those triggering thoughts, then definitely get that book.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, and if you're still inclined and the spiritual abuse wasn't so much that you can't take it, read the Bible. Start in the New Testament. Get a good version. Um, the NIV is fine. King James is great. Um, Read a Bible. Um, Talk with other like-minded people. Take a philosophy class or psychology class.
Yeah, I think one of the things that helped me a whole lot because I didn't go to college until I was about 24, 25 ish. And when I took that psychology class, uh, that was one of the first things that actually opened my mind up to thinking differently. And a lot of XJWs suggest
Mm-hmm.
taking a psychology class because that is one of the things, of course, maybe one of the reasons why we're so discouraged from going to higher educations because of classes like that open your mind up and start making you think, wait a minute, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, you know? Um, so yeah, totally. Now you said that you gave was any of this information that you gave to anyone to research and they just chose not to research this also?
Mm-hmm.
So you gave them a lot of information to
I
back
gave them
up.
a lot of information. I sent them to a lot of YouTube channels, a lot of specific YouTube videos from some of the activists on YouTube and news clips. I gave them a lot of information, but I
Mm.
mean, there's only so much you can fit in, and I mean, who knows? Maybe there's laws or something. I don't know.
Do you think it helped you in any way?
Um, what? Just being on the show, was it
Mhm.
helpful? No,
No.
not at all.
I kind of got that there were a lot of people, we've talked about a lot of the comments that have been in the video, and some people were saying there was one comment I think that you actually did think was interesting, and you maybe wanted to answer. I can't remember which one exactly it was. Maybe it'll come to me in a moment.
Either.
It's so many that we've talked about. Um, but I wonder, do you think that the intent was ever really to try to help you in any way? Did you ever feel like you were actually they were actually trying to help you, or do you think it was just more or less let's just get some ratings?
No, there was no there. I mean, I think in the very beginning there it was. In the very beginning it was. When I first got that very first phone call at like 10 o'clock at night from the producer saying, "Hey, we want to talk to you about it." Yeah, I felt like, and then that back and forth, that constant exchange that we had. And even when I first got there, I felt like they did. But the closer that we got, like, the more the camera was rolling, the more I felt the disingenuousness of it, because it just, when you have to start washing dishes in a fake kitchen, like, it doesn't feel like it
What?
doesn't feel real anymore. Doesn't feel like and when they're setting up lights, like mood lights for random things, it doesn't feel genuine anymore. It's
Hmm.
obviously, then when you go to sign that release, you're like, oh man, like, okay, this is not.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, we a lot of people wondered if the scripting was part of it, and I think it's good that you have actually come out and talked to people because I think it's really important for people to see you as a person and not just
A paid
the,
actor.
right, a paid actor. I think that's what we were talking about. A lot of people were thinking you were a paid
That one
actor.
cracked me up.
Yeah, people
I
would think.
wish, man. I wish. That
um,
would be nice. Yeah, but no,
no, not a
sadly.
not a paid actress.
No.
Um, you actually had genuine help in mind when you went. You weren't just out there trying to make a name for yourself.
Mm-mm.
Um, and I think it's really important for people to see you as a real person, not just that girl that was on Dr. Phil. And that's something that you are concerned about. You don't want to be known as that. You really want people to realize who you are as a person and what you're trying to accomplish.
I'd much rather be known for my activism work. I'd much rather be known for that. I started that long before I ever wrote into Dr. Phil, so that would be much nicer.
Yeah, definitely. Does the research into cult stuff cause a bunch of conflict at home?
Yeah, It does.
How do you how do you how do you deal with that? Like how do you manage the conflict or that may cause and still getting your research so that you can pursue your activism?
I'm just careful about it. I don't want to cause any more problems at home, so I mean, I it doesn't have to be shoved in his face. So,
Right. Right. I think this has been really, really good. And my whole point in making that initial video, because I never expected you to see it. I didn't expect I didn't expect anybody to really see it. And it's at around 13,000 views now. So it's
wow.
actually getting around. But
I
you
know
know,
I've
my
shared it a few times because I really appreciated it. So,
but my initial point in making that video was to really try to get it out there that people don't realize that the way he talked to you guys is the way that so many people talk to ex Jehovah's Witnesses and current Jehovah's Witnesses, and people don't realize the the hurtful nature that is. Even though you don't agree with what they're saying or what they're doing with their lives, you still have to respect people. And and cognitive dissonance is real. It is
yes.
so real, and people. I
Hmm.
never knew that until I found out what it was later, and then you can kind of connect the dots with the way people act. So I imagine that you see a lot of that being an ex-JW living with a current Jehovah's Witness.
Yes, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance.
What are some of the ways that you think it manifests in not just your relationship? I mean, you can touch on that, but in general, that you've probably noticed.
The way that it manifests,
Yeah, like
they don't get up and leave. They don't wake up. So the fact that they just stay in, I mean, every ex-JW, the one thing that we all have in, or every ex-cult member, the one thing we all have in common is that we all had a question. I I find it really hard to believe that every current member doesn't have some question that they would love to have an answer to. So I mean, they must be pushing it to the back of their mind. They have to be. Um, I'd like to talk to that person that doesn't have any questions.
yeah, I always had questions even when I was in, but there's such an atmosphere created to not ask and not to even doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And living in that atmosphere where you are constantly unable to ask questions or even have the like you like you said, the independent thinking to even formulate a question is is so suppressed that I wouldn't be surprised that if everyone all of them don't do have questions, but they're pushed so far back they probably don't even remember what the questions are anymore.
I wouldn't go that far.
Well, I
A
say
lot
that
of Jehovah's
because
Witnesses are intelligent people. They are intelligent people. So I
oh
mean,
yeah, of
I
course,
wouldn't go that far.
of
I do
course.
think they have questions, and I do think that they are scared to research. Probably as many of us once were, because I mean, for a variety of reasons.
I
So,
think like when I say that, I don't mean it in an unintelligent way. I know for myself early on when I had questions, it was beaten into me so much to not have them that I pushed them back so far that I just forgot about it. Yeah, I just didn't even think about it anymore. So
yeah, and I get that.
I don't want it to come across to me saying anything. I don't ever want to say anything derogatory toward an individual Jehovah's Witness. My
No, and I
issue.
get what you're saying because it was the same way
Yeah.
with me. Because remember, I had said that I had questions. I was doing research and I was having questions, and they just said, "Well, if you just keep studying,
Hmm.
then all of your answers will be. I mean, all of your questions will be answered." So I mean, it was the same thing with me. And then after a while of mind-numbing study,
Hmm.
you do kind of forget what they are. But I mean, it's not. But every once in a while, an article comes along, or scripture comes along, or talk comes along, and you know, naturally, you're gonna have a question like, "Wait a minute, that's not," you know. So I mean, like I said, I would love to meet the person that doesn't have any questions, because they all have to have questions, multiple questions. And maybe they're not the same one today that they had yesterday, but they have to have questions. And so if the cognitive dissonance comes into play when they just keep pushing that to the back of their mind instead of saying, well, let me look into this from an outside source or from a neutral source, or,
Hmm. Hmm. Have you have you shared any, or do you try to share any of the information that you've discovered with your husband?
in the beginning I did. Like I said, that was that really backfired really badly. That
If you could do it
persecution.
over again, what do you think would be one of the most advantageous ways for someone in your position to actually reach the person that they're trying to reach?
Um, I think I would have gone undercover for a lot longer. I didn't realize back then the magnitude of the persecution complex. You can't really bring up anything without them feeling attacked, um, especially once you vocalized that, hey, I don't believe this, I don't want to do this. Once you do that, you've lost all credibility with them. Um, so I probably would have been Pimo a lot longer. I don't know how I would have done that, but
That is a very, very valid point. Several of the comments that I have actually replied to were on that very topic. And people don't realize that it's very difficult to find the words to say to someone in that position that don't trigger an immediate emotional response from them.
well, but they're conditioned. We were conditioned from the very beginning, within the first couple chapters of the Bible Teach book, um, that anybody who's not a Jehovah's Witness, they create a very strong us versus them attitude from the very beginning. And very quickly, you want to be on the us instead of the them team, you know? So when from the very beginning, that's really hard. That's very hard to, if you're not with them, you're against them, and that's very hard to get through. They're not, you've lost all credibility if you're not with them.
Exactly.
So you can't,
Exactly.
leave and wait. I've heard of it done, but that makes things a whole lot harder.
Yeah. Yeah. And
You don't lend yourself any credibility once you decide to leave.
exactly. Agreed. And, we're in similar situations. When I walked away from the organization, I was still, still married at the time. So I was the one that was the unbelieving mate. Um, and I think it's really more difficult. I know some witnesses have unbelieving mates that were never in the organization, but to have a mate that was in the organization and then kind of defects is a little bit different because you're dealing with someone who, in their mind, and I think one people don't realize too, that in the mind of the organization, whether you're baptized or not, we touched on this, but once you've been exposed to it, to them. So you just can't just leave, because at that point in their
Well,
minds you've been exposed to it, and so you just can't walk away.
yeah, and in a marital situation, um, being a Jehovah's Witness isn't just something you do. It is a part of who you are. It 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 sets up boundaries for your entire lifestyle. So once you leave and you knock down those boundaries, you may or may not be the same person that you were while you were in. Um,
Very valid point. Very good point.
so when two people are together and they're both in and one leaves and they decide to knock down all those boundaries, there's a change that happens. Um, I'm not exactly the same person that I was when I was in. Definitely not. I mean, I still consider myself a Christian, so I'm not some evil, wicked person or anything, but I don't necessarily find the same things atrocious that I once found atrocious before, and I find myself doing things that I wouldn't have done before and enjoying them. So, and that makes, in a marital situation, that's always hard when one person changes so differently from the other one.
Yeah, drastically. It's a complete lifestyle and thought change, which, like you said, in essence, changes that person. So you're basically, that person is basically married to a completely different person, and that can
I
cause
wouldn't
some
say completely
very,
different, but I mean, yeah, it's definitely not as what it was before.
yeah. I mean, I say that for myself because once I woke up, I was pretty much a completely different person because I didn't think the same way. All the walls that I had up were
Your
down and
perspective on life changes
everything
completely,
changed.
everything changes.
Exactly. So in that way, I was a completely new person. It was almost it was almost like all the paint on a picture had come off and it was a blank slate, and then you can repaint that picture however you want it. So in that way, yeah, I was a very new person, which caused um, even more rifts in my marriage at the time. So
Yeah. No,
um,
and I completely get what you're saying.
yeah, I think I think this is good. I think we have touched on everything that I think I wanted to touch on, and actually a lot more things than I was aware we were even going to touch on. Is there any last thing that you would like to say to people about about you and what you're trying to accomplish? If you had one last thing to say, what would it be?
No, just visit my group and seriously think about just join PAC and seriously think about um, reaching out to your senators about getting a sponsor to get a bill passed to make predatory alienation illegal. And this is so much bigger than just cults, guys. This is much bigger. Um, Predatory alienation happens between physical abusers and their victims. It happens between, I mean, it happens in MLM groups. It happens in not just cults, but I mean, it's much bigger than that, guys. So if we can get a bill sponsored, even just in a few states, that's going to help a lot of people. And like I said, it's going to help pave the way for litigation. Just imagine if this bill got passed and it became illegal to do these things, it became illegal to have policies to alienate a person from a whole group or an organization or from their family or friends. And we could sue people who are responsible, the organizations that are responsible for putting these policies and these practices into place. Um, how quickly would they crumble without these policies in place? Every person that's PMO right now, if they could just walk out because they no longer had to fear being alienated from their friends and their family, that would be huge, guys. So let's jump on this. Help me out.
Good stuff, Tatiana. Thank you so much for talking to me again. And yeah, I think that is everything, guys. I'm going to post a link to her group in the description. Um, and please, yeah, comment on the video. If you have any questions, please leave them. We see comments, and she might shoot me one, and I might shoot her one. So if you have questions, positive comments, positive comments. Please share them. And if you guys, found this video useful, please like, share, subscribe. Thank you again, Tatiana, for watching my initial video and then agreeing to come and talk to me a couple times. I really appreciate it. And thank you again. I hope you all the best.
Thank you.
All right,
Bye.
guys. Thank you, guys. Bye.